What is the role of empathy in your marriage? I mean, does it even play a role? Of course it does, but probably not the one you think it does. Let's dive into it today. This is the Strength of Seduction podcast, the number one resource for Black couples who want to build intimacy, love, and connection in their relationship. I'm your host, Daniel DiPiazza. Guys, welcome back to the Strength of Seduction podcast, the number one resource for Black couples who want to build intimacy, love, and connection in their marriage. I'm your host, Daniel DiPiazza. If you're new here and you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, subscribe, and to hit that bell for updates. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast platform like Apple or Spotify, make sure to subscribe and to leave a review. Of course, you're already listening right now, aren't you? And guys, we have an incredible episode for you today on the role of empathy in your relationship and exactly what it means to develop empathy in your relationship and why it's important. But before we dive in, I want to let you know that we are offering free 30-minute coaching sessions to any podcast listener who wants to build more health, wealth, and intimacy into their relationship. And on this call, you're going to go through the Relationship Health Booster with one of our coaches. This is a 30-minute session designed to help you uncover the strengths and to find the biggest opportunities for growth in your marriage, to help you guys get on the same page or just stay on the same page. And you can get a free 30-minute coaching session. It's really just simple. You go to strengthofseduction.com/coaching. You fill in a very short application, and then you book a time on our calendar. And the link is also going to be in our show notes. So let's get to today's. Just wanted to recap everyone. Over the past 2 weeks, we've put together two incredible and well-attended masterclasses, two guest instructor series. Really, it was two versions of the same series. It's called Mastering Sex in Your Marriage. This is an event we did with sexologist. She's a licensed and certified clinical sexologist. Her name is Maisha Battle, and she put together some incredible presentations for us. And we went through basically live a real deep exploration into uncovering and unpacking sex in our marriage. And I think this is so important, especially just look in our community. A lot of times we don't get an updated version of sex ed. A lot of us haven't had a real discussion about sex since, fourth grade or something, like a real rethink of what our needs are, what our wants are, what is good for us, what we would like to improve. And we also haven't had very good conversations around it with our partners maybe, or it's been a while since we have. So anyway, these classes they were just a joy to put on and a lot of fun. And we had a great attendance. Our first one completely shut down the live stream. We actually didn't have enough space. And our second one, we were able to get it right. And the recordings are going to be up soon. So if you're on our email list already, we're going to email those out. If you're in our Strength of Seduction live or Strength of Seduction private community, you'll get an update when those are live. And we're going to put together the recordings of those master classes for anyone who didn't have a chance to attend these live. But more importantly, the live experiences are your opportunity to ask questions to the experts, to really dive in here. And they're just things that we do because we're asking you what you want and you're telling us, and then we're finding great people to teach us these things. And I haven't quite planned out our next one yet. I have a pretty good idea who we're going to bring on, but stay tuned, stay plugged into the community, stay plugged into the podcast, and I'll be dropping some hints about what our next event is going to be, what our next topic is going to be. And this is one of those things where I really want to keep surveying people as much as possible. I want to keep understanding what it is that you want. And so when you see a survey in the community, when you see a survey in your email inbox, go ahead and take 3 seconds, 10 seconds, just give us a response, because it's going to help us to know exactly what it is that you want, exactly what it is that you are enjoying. And we'll do more of that. And then we'll just keep improving. And, this works so much better when the community is putting their whole voice behind it. And we can really start to build something that you guys are proud of, and we can do it together. So anyway, enjoy those resources. Make sure that you book your free coaching session. Make sure you check out the replay of Mastering Sex in Your Marriage whenever we drop it into the community. Today, we're talking about the role of empathy in our marriage. We're unpacking it. And I think obviously just jumping off right into this now, I think that we should differentiate between empathy and sympathy, right? And especially when it comes to just like the fact that sympathy is essentially feeling sorry for someone, and empathy is being able to feel their pain in some way or relate to them in a way where you can connect on a personal level. I think sympathy a lot of times is very impersonal. And then there are different types of empathy as well when it comes to, especially in your marriage. There's like a cognitive empathy, right? So that's like understanding your partner's thoughts, having some sort of understanding of, their thought process is a form of empathy. I think emotional empathy obviously is the one we think about the most, feeling what your partner feels, being able to understand what it is they're feeling. And there's also just empathy that you can express through your actions, so taking action to help them, I think, is empathetic as well. So it's like thinking, feeling, doing. There are different types of empathy. And I think that when it comes down to it, the reason why empathy is so important in a marriage is because at our core, we have very few people in our lives who are truly empathetic to us. We have a few key friends and family members and our spouse, if we have picked correctly and if we have also nurtured the relationship, should be one of, if not the number one, should really be the number one most empathetic person for us, should be truly able to understand what it is that we're feeling, to understand our thought processes, to go through something as much as they can with us. Like, I can say that for Sarah for sure. You are always going to be mostly doing this alone. Also, everyone is kind of in this together and alone. So you're going to go through life and you still have to deal with all these things internally, your emotions and your thoughts and your memories, your past, all this stuff. But your partner, as an empathetic person, would be there the whole time. It would be the closest person to you. It would be the person who could understand the most. Even though they won't be you, they can empathize with you the most, supposedly, hopefully. That would be the role of a great partner. And that would be the role of that in a marriage. It just feels good to have someone who can truly empathize with you. And I think one of the best ways to show empathy and to enhance your communication by becoming more empathetic is just becoming a better listener, just actively listening and not waiting to respond to someone, but actually listening and hearing them, and not just saying something pre-programmed in order to get to what it is that you want to express, but responding to what they're saying, processing what they're saying, responding to what they're saying. Also, modulating the tone of your response and just being more aware of how you're being received and perceived. And this is something that many of us haven't thought about our entire lives. There's also just nonverbal cues too when it comes to empathetic communication. Just your distance to people, the space that you give people, the way that you hold your body, the way that you either you can close your body down or you can open your body up, and that will encourage a different type of sharing. There's eye contact, which can be very empathetic. So anyway, these are all ways of just showing empathy in your communication. I think that when it comes to conflict resolution, empathy is also very important. I think that you have to understand someone else's viewpoints in order to be able to truly disengage a disagreement. There are so many times in marriage where we refuse to see someone else's point of view because we're so convinced of our own rightness. And ultimately, it doesn't really even it's not always about being right. It's just about understanding why someone's perspective is the way it is. I mean, you can look at a lot of really evil people in history who are dead wrong, but you can understand why they did it, right? And that goes a long way in either forgiveness or in just general communication. When you truly understand why someone does something, you can forgive them, or you have the biggest opportunity to forgive them when you understand them, when you truly understand them. And, I think it's also just the most useful thing for de-escalating conflicts, because, one thing I like to do is I like to see people as they were when they were kids. Like if you think about your partner or your even your parent or your sibling, someone who's close to you, and they're having a meltdown or they're going through something tough or they're yelling at you. Sometimes I'll just see them as a child and I'll think, not in a demeaning way, but like we've all been children. We're all partially still children a lot of times, and we're just trying to get our needs met in some basic way. It doesn't always express itself very well, but it helps, or even just looking at pictures of your partner as a kid, it creates some empathy, because it just helps you remember, oh yeah, these are humans just like me. They were kids just like me. They had, their own things that they're still dealing with to this day, just like me. And just reminds you where we all come from. And I think it's an important part. So, but empathy in general is great for conflict resolution because it allows you to soften yourself a little bit. When it comes to being right about something versus nurturing the relationship, they're not always the same thing. Sometimes you can be right about something technically, like logically, but it doesn't really matter because sometimes being right isn't winning. And so I think that we just have to also look at our ultimate goal. Like, what is our goal? Is our goal to prove that we were the smartest, that the person should have listened to us like we said, that we were right about this, and that? And ultimately, someone can tell you that you're right, but feel still hurt by you in a way. And if your goal is to stay together and your goal is to improve the relationship, then you just need to think about, what is you're trying to accomplish when you're in a conflict, and is the goal is it to make a point? Is it to one up? Is it to win? Is it a battle that's worth fighting? And then of the battles that are worth fighting, can you truly put yourself in the other person's shoes? Does that change your stance? What would you do if the roles were reversed? That's a healthy way of looking at things. It's more constructive. So yeah, these are all just different ways of bringing empathy into conflict resolution. I think that there are a lot of things you can do. I mean, I think that I heard someone recently, I think his name is Alex Hormozy. He was talking about a journaling exercise he did one time to overcome a betrayal of someone who betrayed him. And he wrote the journal entry from the perspective of the other person. I thought it was a powerful example, putting yourself in someone else's shoes, and if you're ever having a difficult disagreement with your spouse, one thing you could do would be to write the argument from their perspective and to really pretend as if you're them and write the argument from their perspective and defend it. I mean, think about it. When an attorney has to defend a criminal, for instance, and we're not calling your spouse a criminal, everyone's innocent until proven guilty. A criminal attorney has to defend someone to prove their innocence, essentially. They have to find all the reasons why that person is innocent. And so that's putting together a defense. And it would be good for us all to put together both sides of an argument when it comes to whatever we're going through with our spouse, because that will give us a lot of insight into what our own personal biases are, how our partner might have been thinking and why they might have done something, and it just creates more awareness. I think what it does really is it allows us to see that there's always multiple sides to a conflict, to an equation. And the most empathetic thing is to consider everyone's perspective, which is not always easy because we're raised to just look after ourselves sometimes, to look after getting our own needs met and not even consider others, or not even think about how we're affecting others. Sometimes not maliciously, but just not even think about how we're affecting others. So empathy and role reversing and just in general encouraging openness and vulnerability is great for encouraging empathy in your marriage. And it's just, ultimately it comes down to self-empathy, right? Like just being compassionate for yourself, which, is a whole different topic and we could talk about it another day. But I think that some of the challenges of becoming more empathetic in the marriage can be just stress in general. If everyone's stressed out, it's really hard to make space for each other, and that's real. And I mean, that's relatable. Past traumas, I think when we're still dealing with shit from our past, it's really hard to be open and soft with other people sometimes. Same thing with, communication style. Sometimes we just don't have a very empathetic communication style because we'd never learned to speak in a way that is empathetic to others, like that's in a way that makes others feel seen and heard. I think that for me growing up, I think that growing up in a single parent household and my mom mostly just trying to she had to play the masculine role a lot, and the masculine and the feminine. She had to be able to, project a certain amount of strength. And so I never really saw her show any weakness. And what I interpreted from that was don't show any weakness. And so that made it challenging in my earlier adulthood to learn to express myself because I just wasn't programmed to really to really like speak what was actually going on. I was programmed to like keep it very, stoic essentially. And once I learned to communicate what was going on, it was easier for me to communicate in my relationship because I was more empathetic towards myself. I was more self-aware and able to modify my communication style, my behavior based on this new information, this new understanding, this new awareness. And I think that also made me more empathetic as well because I could openly express and I could also understand someone's perspective a little bit more. And so it was kind of like melting the ice all at once. I think that I just think that there's always a value too to getting some sort of support as well, whether it's counseling, whether it's doing some sort of like seminars or workshops, coaching to cultivate some sort of just improvement in empathy and emotional intelligence in general. This whole concept is emotional intelligence. I think a lot of men also struggle with it. I mean, women as well, for sure. Definitely. We all do. But I think especially men with emotional intelligence, it's a big issue. Learning to be empathetic for others and not just to show the signs, because I also have experienced this in my own life of knowing what signs I'm supposed to show to make people think that I am relating to them, but not really relating to them, which is maybe that's a sociopath or psychopath. I don't know. I think a lot of us maybe do that without realizing that we're doing it. We're not actually feeling it. We're just like, and I think that but once I was able to recognize that, I was able to kind of like process my own stuff. I was like, oh yeah, okay. And I did start to connect more with people and I did start to be able then to share more. And I was able to then understand more. It was, it was personally very fulfilling, but also it was good for the marriage. So yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy, and it takes a lot of individual personal work as well. And so, within the scope of with a podcast, we can only talk about so much. And at some point, I'll bring on different experts to talk about this. These conversations that we're having now in the early days of the podcast, we're only in the 20s as far as episodes. We're in the early days, and they're just building up the concepts that I think are important to share with this audience. And we'll bring on different experts and different people to help fill the gap on some of the, the really cool and interesting ideas. And I thank you guys for being here. But this has been really, I think, an important lesson today. And make sure, obviously, you check out the Strength of Seduction book. If you're a member of our community, it's free. It's in the community. And you can also get it on Amazon, where if you're listening to this now, it should probably almost there. If it's not there, it's going to be up back soon, because we're getting the print back into play. We're upgrading it and putting some new features on it and releasing it back into the wild. And so, and make sure that you check out our free coaching session. Make sure that if you haven't already, you get that relationship health booster with your partner. It's a 30-minute session to get you and your spouse on the same page. And it's all based in research that we've done with this community. So I think it's a really powerful way to get aligned. And it's just worth your time. It's an investment in your love. So so do it. And that's strengthofseduction.com/coaching. That is it for the Strength of Seduction podcast for today. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us on, and leave a review on Apple or Spotify. Please, for the love of God. As I always say, my friends, love fiercely, communicate openly, and always find your way back to each other. Daniel, out.